A little bit of frost is not going to stop us because we're WGXC.
You know, this is also just standard for the area that we live in. We are in the Northeast, and we are in a pattern where weather comes down from Canada that, you know, it's. I remember times in June in the summer where it got down into the 30s and 40s around here. So.
And then we have those crazy mountains that we are.
Yep. I mean, on the other hand, it was, you know, I was supposed to go camping with my son.
How did that
on
work
Saturday.
out?
Well, we got up there. We went walking about half a mile to find his Cub Scout troop. He fell down, hurt himself pretty badly. And they were just coming out of the woods. We were late because we had been in a Little League game, which they continued to play in the rain, which, yeah, I got to hand it to those kids. You know, once they're competing, they're really into it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they came out and all the kids were grumpy. The parents looked even grumpier, so they called it off. And it's, of course, as we drove away, we see it lightening and clearing in the background. So that Saturday afternoon turned out quite beautiful. And I thought yesterday was actually, you know, moody, but there's something beautiful and very much of this region when the weather gets like this or like it was yesterday. This kind of combination of you know, roiling clouds and bright sunlight, and yeah, it reminds us that we are poised here in between New England and the Great Plains. That we've got maritime. You know, climate to our south, and we've got the Arctic not that far away to our north. So, you know, just look at this weather as something that ties us into where we are.
Meteorology speaking, it's weird. That's what it is. It's
Yes.
weird weather.
And
there you go.
yeah.
That's the word. It's a scientific word for it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also, yeah, it is below the average, et cetera. But then, you know, before we know it, it's going to go above the average, and you know, we'll be complaining there too. So.
That's right. And don't use this as an excuse not to do that yard work. Okay,
Right.
Get out there and trim those hedges.
And it was a good Mother's Day yesterday. People seem to be taking it in. The plant stores were really busy everywhere I saw.
Kicking.
Yep. And speaking of plant stores and the like, there was the thing called the Fortnightly Club over in Catskill. They do a few events in the fall. They do they kind of kick off the holiday season with what seems to me very early tree celebration at the beginning of November. But they had their 7th annual Rip Van Winkle Wine and Cheese Festival on Saturday afternoon. And
Ooh la la.
they had it down in the by Catskill Point. It was originally going to be outside. They did it in that huge barn-like structure there by the river, and it was packed, just completely packed. It was like everybody looked up at the sky, said, enough of the rain. We're going to go drink some wine, eat some cheese. You know, similarly, there's a big, the Catskill Garden Club does its big event next weekend, and from what we hear, it's selling out. It's going to take place at the Beatty Powers. There was also on Saturday over here in Hudson, in Columbia County, was the 38th annual spring auction at the Hudson Valley Old Time Power Association. It pulled crowds, huge crowds of people, you know, coming out for old farm implements, etc. And partly it's that you know, well-trained antiquing crowd here in Hudson that is always looking for something cute, different, you know, but there's also a lot of the hands in the back pocket sorts, you know, guys kind of getting out there before Mother's Day looking at you know, farm implements and equipment.
People like me looking for something that's cheap.
Cheap, yeah, but also, you know, it's sort of like a tool, looks sort of cool. You can have it sit in the yard and rust there for a while. 70 walkers were out Saturday morning, which was actually, you know, a pretty nice time. Took part in the 5th annual Greene County Community Cancer Walk, and that was around Catskill and various places. There was also you know, a lot of people out biking this morning coming across the Rip Van Winkle Bridge. I've never seen that many people walking the bridge. It seems to have gotten very popular this season. There are about 30 people on the bridge going every which way.
Now, I hate to bring this up, but we did have a lot of jumpity-offity bridge. Was it last year? Last summer? We had two? Didn't we have two last summer?
Was it off of this bridge?
Yeah, the Rip Van Winkle.
Dear. Well, that's something we're going to come back to later in this whole story. It's I believe there was.
Yeah.
But this is, as an exercising place and just a place to kind of get a sense of the grandeur, both of nature and man's place in it. That bridge is
it's gorgeous,
incredible. Speaking of the antiquing community, both here in Hudson and elsewhere around our area, a lot of them are heading off, will be out of town the beginning part of this week. Why? Because over in Massachusetts, there's a big thing called Brimfield. Brimfield is one of the big antique fairs.
Oh, those darn Massachusetts.
And I know. Well, there's one in the center of New York State, too. This is where kind of dealers go and move materials back and forth. It's not really your retail sort of place, but a huge wholesale sort of place. People rent out trailers. They go for 2 or 3 days of intense shopping and buying and selling. So if you're wondering where everybody's disappeared to from Warren Street, they're over in Brimfield, dressed warmly, and hopefully it won't be raining on them too much. In terms of stories out there right now, there's a fascinating thing going on up in the New York City watershed where last year and the year before they started to allow boats besides rowboats onto the reservoirs. This year they're allowing boat concessions. The facilities will be owned by the New York City DEP, but they'll rent out canoes and kayaks on the Schoharie Reservoir, which is up in kind of the edge of our listening area, and then down in Delaware County at the Cannonsville and Pacton Reservoirs, and kind of way down in Sullivan County at Neversink.
Are they allowing those motorized boats?
No, I don't think that. I doubt they will allow motorized boats. It looks like the next step from here, as they kind of gradually bring this in, the next step would be to open up the Ashokan Reservoir, which is over in Ulster County and is sort of the crown jewel of the reservoir system. I don't know if you've never been over there, go and take a look. It's got it's magnificent. It was kind of the grand building project that America undertook after the right around the same time, actually, as the Panama Canal. And it was just a major earth-moving endeavor that took out an entire valley of villages at the same time. They had to move the railroad. They just scraped everything down to the rock and had to move, I think it was like 20 cemeteries. It was a big thing at the time. It's a gorgeous space ringed by mountains and kind of beautiful roads and walkways all around it. That's the first step, is opening that up. And then once they've gotten all these reservoirs opened or not to kayaking and canoeing and other recreational possibilities, and they've been opening up the trails, et cetera, around them, the question is, at some point, will they open them up for swimming as well? If that happens, you change the whole kind of recreational leisure nature of the Catskills and a lot of this region. You're not supposed to do it. I have swum in 4 of the reservoirs. There's 7 of them. It's spectacular. It's like swimming in a giant water cooler.
When I was downstate, and I used to visit the Kensico all the time, there was no swimming allowed, but you could never tell that by all the people who were swimming.
I know. Yeah, and that's where those reservoirs over there are closer into it's an filtered reservoir system, or untreated. So it's filtered and goes through various things, but that's the great fear. But if they can open that up recreationally up here, it'll be a huge thing for the region. Now, let me try to get this back up. The other thing that occurred that's been on a lot of people's mind over in Greene County was end of last week. I think it was Wednesday. There was a tragic head-on accident on Route 23 up in the mountaintop area where Don Olson, he was a clerk to the Greene County Legislature for many years from Prattsville. He was, head of the fire department there. He was a town judge for years. I knew him 25 years ago. He was the pressman. He ran the presses at the Catskill Mountain News, which was one of the great newspapers. It's still alive, but it prints elsewhere. But back in the day when every little newspaper had its own pressman, Don was a great pressman. He was a fun, wonderful guy. He passed on as a result of this 8:15 in the morning head-on collision on Route 23.
Yeah, I remember it was on the top of my news, I think Friday.
Yeah, big thing, and everybody's still kind of reeling from that. The other thing that's gearing up right now and that's happening this week is we're gearing up towards our school elections a week from tomorrow, in which school boards will be elected and budgets will be passed. From what I can tell, all the budgets are within the 2% tax cap this year. Although that doesn't mean they're 2%. There's all these configurations and ratios, et cetera, that bring them. It can be up close around 4%, and by the time you get to the tax levy element, they'll consider it at the 2% tax cap. So there was a bad experiment last year in Germantown where they every place where they tried to go over that 2% tax cap where you needed
kicked back.
It was kicked back, which caused a lot of austerity problems.
I'm going to take this opportunity to stick in a WGXC plug from our own Tom Rowe. At least 3 of the school board elections include candidate forums this week.
That's what I was going to talk about next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you got it?
Yeah.
All right.
Bring that. Yeah, tomorrow. Time and Space Limited here in Hudson is hosting a candidate forum, and it'll be broadcast live starting at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow on Wednesday at the Carroll Library. There's another such forum starting at 6:30 that's being run by the Greene County League of Women Voters, who's chairperson I see every morning and every evening, and is my wife, Fawn Potash. And then on Thursday, May 16th, the Greenville School District is doing a Meet the Candidates event in the high school auditorium from 7 to 9 p.m. And I don't know if the final one, if that's, is that being broadcast?
I don't know. It doesn't indicate it there, but that doesn't mean we won't do it. We'll figure out a way, and we'll let you know.
And there's other such events going on. Meet the Candidates events have been going on in all our school districts. It's not huge, tight races, except Caro is very interesting because there's a redistricting plan that's in play there, and it's got that district very riled up right now. And similarly up in Ichabod Crane, where there's 4 candidates running for 3 seats, which seems to be the norm this year. There's been a lot of questioning around the Common Core curriculum, this new curriculum that the states brought in. And the question isn't the curriculum, but these tests tied to the curriculum that they're already trotting out before the curriculum's been taught. And as somebody pointed out, it's really backwards in many ways to be pushing a test on something before its curriculum has been enacted.
Right.
The idea behind it is that it's all tied to textbooks and private business, and there's a lot of product endorsements within both the test, from what we hear, and the new curriculum. So looking into that, trying to get some answers so that we can not so much form opinions, but just be able to report on it in a correct way. Other things around here, Andrew Cuomo, I almost said Mario Cuomo there, but very busy week last week. He made his announcement in terms of what he was going to be pushing in terms of casino gambling in the state. He's looking for three. The state's divided up into 6 basic areas at this point. He's looking at 3 upstate casinos, none for the city right now. At one point they were talking about 6, they were talking about 8, with at least 3 down in New York City. He's proposing 3 for upstate. I know that's going to cause a big problem down in the lower Catskill, Sullivan County, etc., where I know of at least 2 entities that have invested 100 to 200 million already. And if there's only going to be one given there, it's going to intensify the fight. And somebody's...
well, they're not going to exclude it because Monticello's been dying.
Monticello's been dying for
that.
But I run the paper down in Ellenville, and the Nevele down there, they banked everything on their economic development on this. So you got a real potential problem.
Yeah.
What's happening is that it may get solved. It may just, in real politic terms, Cuomo may be setting this out so that he's feeling safe, and then it gets decided by the legislature. The assembly seems to be kind of standing back from it all to a certain extent because they're much more city-oriented, but the state Senate, there's a lot of powerful forces pushing for 6 casinos, which would give 2 to the Catskills. In other areas.
Both of those areas really need it. Monticello really needs it.
Yeah, and but behind the whole thing too there's a punitive element that Cuomo has brought in to try to solve some of the standoffs that have been going on with the Native American gambling elements throughout the state, which have not been paying taxes, claiming sovereignty, etc. So. Watch for this one to get very intense over the summer months and bring a lot of news.
I can't wait.
Tied to that, the governor also announced a new $60 million tourism campaign. And already there are a lot of, on a local level, everybody's jockeying for some of that money. Meanwhile, you're also having a lot of it's sparking the discussion within each county up here and within communities about how far does a community go towards embracing tourism or against it. And it's a real problem we have in this area. It's not as obvious from within Hudson here, but in Greene County in particular, there's, you've got this whole back and forth going on this right now on Route 23A going up through Catskill Clove, where they've put up barriers to most of the parking places, and yet they want people to come in.
Right. Yeah, that's it. I was getting ready to say that. You don't want your taxes to go up. You don't want your property taxes to go up. And tourism is there,
but people don't want people. Yeah, you got to have. It's that insider-outsider sort of thing.
They're not going to drive through and just leave their money.
Right. Although that seems to be part. Maybe that's part of the idea behind the. I think it's called White Wolf, the huge water park idea for an exit from the Thruway up in New Baltimore in Greene County, which has been on and off again over the years. And it's basically a self-sufficient water park, mall, hotel where people would just be able to drive in, spend all their money, and drive out. And
I can tell you, because as you know, my bride and I, we just moved up here 4 years ago, and we used to come up here all the time, and that doesn't work. We like to go up and down the back roads and see stuff. That's what people do when they come up here. So you guys got to get used to it. That's what, they'll go to that park maybe if they have kids, but people like to drive around the country roads and see stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you have kids, you want the kids to go to sleep, and the best way to do that is to drive around on a country road looking around at things. Another big story that's especially over across the river that's been getting a lot of talk. I mean, the big thing over here is the city of Hudson talking about investing itself into wind power, has gotten a lot of. Over across the river, the big thing was a small story that ran in the Daily Mail towards the end of last week. I think it was on Thursday. It was by Jim Plank, and it was about a group of adult Boy Scout leaders who got ticketed. They were camping up in the Platte Clove area, and they got ticketed for, for anybody who spends time in the state forest, and it's one of the nation's oldest state forests there in the Catskill, knows that you can't camp within 150 feet of a trail and stream in a group of 10 or more without a permit. You can't camp anyway, unless you're in a lean-to within 150 feet of a trail. They want you to kind of get off of the, away from it. And they also have a very strict sign-in. They're in and you sign out. And, I remember thinking, why are they trying to, know what's going on? Well, they want to know if somebody doesn't make it out.
Exactly right.
And
that's exactly right.
So there's there were 6 tickets issued to 5 scout leaders from Rhinebeck, in recent weeks. And I've been hearing it, people saying, oh, there it is, big government crunching down on everyone. Well, here you have a situation where a scout leader is supposed to be teaching a certain responsibility. So it's a much more complex story than all of that. It's also an indication of where we are news-wise in the area when this becomes the major topic.
Well, I have a man crush on our first responders. These men and women are mostly, for the most part, are volunteers. So, I mean, they got to come out and find you if something goes wrong. So it's only fair that we make it as easy as possible.
And if you're teaching those who are responsible for others, like a scout leader,
right? They
know the law. If they don't, they should. And it's there, and it's not a huge fine. And
it's right.
Interesting story. Little interesting story. Here last Wednesday night, Time and Space Limited, which is, by the way, a shout out to them. They're celebrating their 40th year this year. They've been up here for 22 years, but they were started in 1973 down in New York City's Chelsea area by Linda Mossman as a kind of groundbreaking theater group. They had an interesting panel discussion last Wednesday, and we'll hear more about it, in various shows on WGXC over the coming week, including their own, in which they discussed juvenile justice. And supposedly a lot of interesting stuff came up out of that. And, just a great topic out there. In Columbia County, the Board of Supervisors, basically last week was a time for punting. They that whole idea of allowing supervisors to arm themselves and carry guns on county property got pushed off put on the table for a while. Same with they were going to pull funding on or whether to fund or pull funding on the Pine Haven Senior Project, which has been long standing. They punted on that, and similarly, that whole idea of a cell phone surcharge.
Yeah, I know that got punted.
Yeah, let's not deal with that for now. Other thing in terms of kind of to go in line with the governor's incentives, Greene County Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Planning is rolling out a whole new grant program over this coming month that's going to help. Supposed to help tourism-related businesses. Optimize their online presence. Tied with that, they've been going around talking with people in local communities, and that's where they're starting to get a lot of response. Newer business owners saying, "Hey, why aren't we promoting ourselves more?" And other people coming out saying, "We don't want anyone."
Yeah,
up here.
Exactly.
Sam Pratt in his online blog has been following up. Just ardently on the whole TCI fire, where they're from last summer, where they're starting to indicate, sources of the fire, and also internal indications that they were aware something like this could be happening. Now, combined with our report from last week that they seem to be looking at new sites outside of our area. Let's see if this will even be in the news a year from now, or whether they'll be one of those historic side notes. Pete Lopez, our local assemblyman for over in Greene County, his home was burgled last week.
Oh, man.
And the perpetrators were caught. This was all up in Schoharie County. It was just kind of a random house sort of thing. But bad luck there. Bad luck for there's found this in the Freeman, where I guess out of Kingston, a 22-year-old Hudson woman whose car went off State Route 9 early Sunday morning, about 4:30 a.m. The car got lodged in a high-voltage utility tower.
Oof.
She had only minor injuries, thank heavens. Watch out for those high-voltage towers, especially at 4:30 in the morning. What are you doing driving at 4:30 in the morning? The Coxsackie Athens Rotary Club had its auction recently and did better than usual. My wife and son made it over to the Catskill Community Center, where WGXC producer and council member Matt Bua is working with his partner Laura Anderson, and they're coming up with plans for a new indoor playground there. And everybody's having a blast.
Yeah.
They're coming up with all sorts of great ideas.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Milo got to make a seesaw. It was just, and then finally, two kind of final points. There's an interesting story that ran in a lot of the local papers about Philip Patterson, who he's of St. Peter's Presbyterian Church in Spencertown, and he spent the last 7 years handwriting a King James Bible. And he completed that. And wow, congratulations!
Yeah, right.
That's a and then in terms of commiserations, you'd brought up the idea of jumpers and stuff, and there was a lot of. One of my wife's co-workers lost a son to suicide. There was a situation, and he basically, it seems to have been due to chronic Lyme disease, or but it involved the Troy Bridge, and just a very sad sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you realize these choices are out there that we kick ourselves for not doing what we can in them, but they are always out there, and that life, as you say, is something that has to do with the qualities we bring to it, and the idea of compassion and commiseration. So going back in Wikipedia and history, it was on this date in 1846 that the United States declared war on Mexico. The Mexican-American War, a great hiccup in American history. It was on this date in 1917 that the three children reported the first apparition of Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal, which was a huge phenomenon. And it just reminds me of, up here for many years in West Lebanon, there's a little grotto there on Route 20, if you're ever up in that way, that during the teens in the 20s became a huge draw for people from the city, etc., that supposedly you could go up there and pray to St. Christopher and it'd cure all your automobile's cures. And this is back in the day when roads were not that easy, especially trying to get up in that area. So what's never been explored is the relationship between that phenomenon of all these cars that used to come up, and there were masses held for 1,000 cars at once, and the fact that the Lebanon Speedway exists now just a few miles down the road up there. Could be interesting. Also in 1958, it was this day, Velcro was not invented, but first registered. So I guess we're still in the
Yeah.
Velcro age
Let's,
here.
I'm all for celebrating Velcro.
You know, and then it was on this date in 1989 that large groups of students started occupying Tiananmen Square, which was a huge event at that time. Its repercussions are something that we're still living with to this day. And then, as you mentioned, in terms of birthdays, there's the great Stevie Wonder. I also noticed it was on this date in 1914, Joe Louis, a great American athlete and boxer, was born. And in 1939, Harvey Keitel, great actor who has lived for many years in the Hudson Valley, and I have to say, having met him in person, he always looks just unrecognizable in person. Does not look like he does in the movies. And then, in addition to the great Stevie Wonder, you have the birthdays of Richie Valens, of La Bamba fame, and Ogana. And there's a guy, Danny Kirwan, who was one of the early guitarists with the band Fleetwood Mac, kind of a sweet figure of rock and roll. And then the great British drummer Paul Thompson, who was for many years a drummer in Roxy Music, kept quite a beat going there. So there's a roundup for this.
And there it is. Thank you very much, Paul. And, yesterday was Mother's Day. And on Friday, I was asking for and getting a lot of